Now to that breaking news. After days of deliberations, a jury has reached a verdict in the trial of 2 police officers accused in a deadly police chase. This is the high-profile case involving Karon Hylton-Brown.
All right, and now that jury has found both officers guilty of all of the charges against them. News Force Paul Wagner joins us live now. Paul, you were inside the courtroom when that verdict was read, so bring us up to speed with what you know.
It was highly emotional, and I've never seen anything quite like it, to be honest with you. Karon Hylton-Brown's mother, Karon Hylton, who's been down here every day waiting for the verdict. As the verdicts were being read, she couldn't contain herself. She was jumping up and down in her seat. She was snapping her fingers. And then suddenly she jumped up and started screaming at the officers at the defense table. U.S. Marshals jumped up, grabbed her. The judge, Paul Friedman, jumped up, screamed, "Get her out, get her out." And then we understand outside she was accused of assaulting a U.S. Marshal and was put in handcuffs and taken away. So we don't have any reaction from her out here on the street. I can tell you this, when the verdict for second-degree murder was read, Terrence Sutton, sitting at the defense table, lowered his head to the table as if in disbelief. The rest of the verdicts, as they were being read on Terrence Sutton and Andrew Zabavsky, the same reaction. Andrew Zabavsky, the lieutenant who was there accused of conspiracy and obstruction of justice, he had no obvious reaction to it. Sutton was the only one. Now, these officers have been on these GPS monitors, so they've been allowed to come and go. The prosecutor in the case asked that they be stepped back, or at least Sutton be stepped back, I should say. That is taken into custody, but the judge denied it, said they're not a flight risk. They are free to go until sentencing. Now, Terrence Sutton was accused of second-degree murder. He was found guilty. Obstruction of justice as well, and also conspiracy. Andrew Zabavsky was found guilty of obstruction of justice and conspiracy. So the jury spent 4 full days trying to come to a conclusion on this case. They actually went out last Thursday, but it was just a partial day, and then they have spent 4 full days. They only sent 1 note. One other note in this case, I should say, is that this is an historic verdict here in the District of Columbia. No on-duty D.C. police officer was ever charged with murder, and this is now the first time an on-duty D.C. police officer was convicted of murder. You may recall it was back in October of 2020 that Karon Hylton-Brown was allegedly chased by these officers, and he was on a scooter. He was riding up and down the sidewalk. The officers decided to chase him. They chased him into an alley, and then as he came out of the alley, Hylton-Brown was hit by a car, and he suffered severe head injuries, and he died 2 days later. Then there was a lot of civil unrest several days after that, you may recall, where there were a number of people that went to the 4th District Station to protest. There were a number of arrests. So it's been a highly, highly emotional case, and now there's been a conclusion here down in federal court. Back to you guys.
Wow, what a dramatic conclusion. Paul Wagner at the courthouse for us. Thanks so much, Paul. We'll see you once again at 6 o'clock.
So y'all just heard that audio right there from the news clip from NBC4. Before I get into it, let me offer my condolences to the family of Karon Hylton-Brown. And it's crazy that this happened like literally in my neck of the woods, and believe it or not, this is my first time actually hearing about this story, because they said this happened in 2020 in October, and anything that happened post George Floyd, you really didn't hear about like that, because George Floyd and everything going on with that took precedence. So I really didn't hear much about this story, even though it happened in my backyard. So I'm kind of upset about that I didn't know about it, but it is what it is. Can't go back in time and change that. I tried to get a picture of them side by side in one shot, but these were the only 2 I could find of them together. So I had to go, when I typed their names in Google, luckily they had them side by side, but I'm talking about as far as within an article. So they're in 2 separate articles. But these are the 2 individuals right here who are responsible for the murder of Karon Hylton-Brown. You saw a better picture of one of them in the previous picture that I had up while the audio was playing, which I believe was this guy right here. Of course, he looks a little bit different in this picture than he does in that other one, because you know that was a couple years ago, and I'm sure he's grown facial hair, of course, since then. And this is the other individual right here. Their names are Terrence Sutton and Andrew Zabavsky. Terrence Sutton was found guilty of second-degree murder, conspiracy to obstruct, and obstruction of justice, and he was the one driving the car. Andrew Zabavsky was found guilty of conspiracy and obstruction of justice, and he was behind the wheel of the second police car involved in the chase. So I believe Terrence Sutton was the one that was driving the car that hit Karon Hylton-Brown. Now I'm looking at another image where it actually shows, I guess that's body cam footage from another cop of, well, not footage, but so much a drawing, like a mock-up of them two plus Karon laying dead on the ground. I'm not actually going to show that picture because even though it's a drawing of that image, it's still pretty graphic considering the nature of how Karon's body is just laying there lifeless, and you know, I'll just say blood is coming out of his head, because remember they said he suffered a head injury, and that's what ended up killing him. But yeah, if in the video they literally show him like he's riding on the moped or the scooter going down the street on the sidewalk, and they're chasing him, and it's at night, and then all of a sudden when they catch him, that's when they just bump him. Like they literally hit this guy off the scooter, off the bike, and he went flying. And that's what caused him to get the head injury. His head literally cracked open when he hit the ground, when he hit that concrete. The point of the matter is they could have went at this a whole nother way. They could have easily just stopped him if they really wanted to stop him and really apprehend him like they're claiming like they wanted to. They could have easily did it a whole nother way, but you know how that goes. So they were probably frustrated, most likely, that they couldn't get him, and they were probably, I don't know, tired or whatever the case may be, and they let their anger and rage get the best of them, that instead of doing everything by the book and by protocol, which they usually often don't do when it comes to us, they decide that they're going to hit this guy off his bike and make him fly forward. Thus, he ends up getting a head injury and dying 2 days later. I believe this guy was only 20 years old at the time, which means he was born in 2000. Unless he was turning 21 that year, he was born in 99. Very young and gone so fast because they couldn't control whatever issues that they had. Well, now they're going to the last place that I'm sure either one of them wanted to get, because they were both found guilty of second-degree murder. Now, I don't know what the sentencing is going to be because they were just found guilty. I'm sure with the second-degree murder charge, they're going to face a lot of years and hopefully behind bars, and hopefully they put them in Gen Pop in that federal prison. I truly believe whenever a cop does something like this, outside of their jurisdiction or outside of their protocol, if they ever get found guilty in a proper sentencing, that they should go in Gen Pop. There should not be room for them to say do federal prison or anything outside of a state prison sentencing. Sort of like, what's his name, Van Dyke, the one who killed Laquan McDonald. Remember, they had put him in a state prison briefly, but they was beating his ass up in there as they should, and then he wanted to cry and bitch and complain, and then they ended up moving him out of the state prison and put him in a federal prison in a whole nother state. Same thing with Derek Chauvin. If they can dish it out on their victims, then they should be able to find a way to try to take care of themselves when they get behind those four walls. That's how I feel about it, and I'm sure many other people feel the same way. The same thing should happen to these two clowns as well. Again, they could have taken any other protocol, but they decided, nope, I'm going to use my vehicle as a weapon and hit this guy off this bike and send him flying forward. Thus, him dying a few days later. And I'm sure, like, sometimes in the moment, they probably don't even think that they're going to do something like that until it actually happens, which is why they got hit with second-degree murder, because it wasn't premeditated that they were going to do it. But it happened. This man is dead. He's going to be eternally 20 years old. His family got to deal with it. And it's crazy because, you know, when you heard in the audio, they said that his mother was going through a ball of emotions, like different levels of emotions, to the point where she ended up having to get put in cuffs herself because they said she attacked a U.S. Marshal. But what also got me, but it's not so surprising, is that they said this is the first time ever in DC's history, with the police anyway, where at least one cop has been charged with, while on duty, with some kind of murder charge. Just one. Now, this one you have two that were hit with second degree. Well, one of them was hit with second degree murder charges. The other one was hit with conspiracy. They said this is the first time that has ever happened with an on-duty cop. So it makes you wonder how many more out there have gotten away with things while they were on duty. I'm willing to bet dozens. I keep telling y'all, the police departments are some of the biggest corrupt organizations in the establishment. And this is proof right here. I had to insert this part in here because this actually came up to me, or came to my attention after I recorded the first part of this video. And shout out to Linus Crown on Twitter for sending this information to me. So you know how in the earlier part of the video, it was talking about how Karon Hylton-Brown's mother was arrested because of her altercation with some U.S. Marshals. I believe that's who they were. Well, she gave me an update where it says Karon Hylton, the mother of Karon Hylton-Brown, has been released from U.S. police custody and all charges dropped. The community demands that all perceived targeting and harassment of the deceased family cease now. This was a lowly and cowardly move by law enforcement. So I saw that part, but I didn't realize it was attached to this other tweet from this account named Harriet's Dreams that says Karon Hylton was unjustly arrested after 2 police officers were found guilty for being complicit in her son's death. Officer Sutton, a convicted murderer, went home to spend Christmas with his family. This is violence and injustice. Rise up in solidarity that they free Karon Hylton. Of course, by now they've already released her. But look at that. They allowed a convicted murderer, someone who has been convicted in the murder of a black man, go home and spend time with his family for Christmas. As in the words of Rob over at Blacklight Revelations, the world is indeed correct, because it is not incorrect if this is happening. It's correct when this shit does happen. That's crazy. Not surprising, but crazy.